Hey there and welcome. So, we've all seen it, right? The big push for new tech in our schools, especially with things like generative AI popping up everywhere. But have you ever wondered why some teachers seem to dive right in while others, well, they hesitate or maybe even reject it completely? Today, we're going to dig into a really cool new model that helps explain what's really going on in an educator's mind when they're faced with a new tool.
All right, let's just get right to the heart of it with a question I'm pretty sure we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why do most tech trainings just fail? You know the drill. You sit through a whole workshop, you learn exactly which buttons to click, but then you get back to your classroom and it just doesn't stick. Something's missing.
And here's the thing, this is really the core of the problem. Most of these trainings are all about the technical skills, but they completely miss the human element. It's like they assume that if you just learn how to use a tool, you'll magically just start using it. But that way of thinking totally ignores all the complex thoughts and feelings that actually drive our decisions as educators. Okay, so to really get why this new model is such a game changer, we first have to look at why the old ways of thinking about this just don't cut it. For years, people have been trying to figure out tech adoption, but most of those theories, they just weren't built for the unique world of a classroom. These older models, well, they had some pretty big gaps. First off, their focus was all over the place. They might look at how useful a tool is or how confident a teacher feels, but they almost never looked at both at the same time. Second, they really didn't get the context. I mean, they were mostly designed for business offices where you're told what to use. That's a whole different ballgame from a school where teachers have a ton of professional autonomy. And lastly, they treated adoption like a simple light switch. It's either on or off, a yes or a no, instead of seeing it for what it is, a process, an ongoing journey. So to fill in all those gaps, researchers came up with a brand new framework. And this one is different. It's a much more complete way of looking at the whole decision-making process, and it was built from the ground up specifically for educators. It's called the Mediated Message Model, or just the MMM. So what exactly is the Mediated Message Model? Well, in a nutshell, it's a way to understand how we as educators take in all the information, all the messages we hear about a new piece of tech, and how we process all of that to eventually make a decision about whether or not to use it. It really is all about that journey from hearing about something to actually doing something. And what makes this model so powerful is where it comes from. You see, its secret sauce is that it pulls together insights from a bunch of different fields. We're talking communication theory, behavioral psychology, and motivational psychology. By blending all of these, it gives us a much richer and more accurate picture of what's really going on inside a teacher's head. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this model actually work? We're going to break it down step by step to see how all those messages about a new tool end up turning into real action in the classroom. The whole thing flows through four main stages, and it all kicks off with step one, external messages. Think of this as everything you hear or see about a new tool from the outside world, way before you've even made up your mind about it. Now, these messages tend to come in three main flavors. First, you've got personal experience. This is you actually getting your hands on the tool and messing around with it yourself. Then there's what's called vicarious experience, and this one is huge. It's when you see a colleague you trust using it and having success. And finally, there's persuasive messaging. This is everything else, reading an article, seeing an ad, or maybe hearing about it from your school's leadership. But here's the key. We don't just soak up this information like a sponge. All of those external messages have to pass through two really important personal filters inside our own heads. This is the part where the real thinking, the real processing actually happens. And these two filters are basically two questions we're asking ourselves, often at the exact same time. On one hand, there's perceived efficacy. That's the voice in your head asking, can I actually do this? It's all about your confidence, right? Your belief that you can make this tech work. But on the other hand, you've got perceived value. This is the other critical question. Is this even worth my time? And that's a whole calculation about whether it's useful, if it fits who you are as a teacher, and if the payoff is really bigger than the hassle. And these two filters, or perceptions, they aren't set in stone. Nope. They're constantly being tweaked and adjusted by feedback. For example, getting some praise or support from your school could really boost your sense of value. But on the flip side, running into barriers like glitchy software or no tech support can totally crush your sense of efficacy. So what happens when these two things, can I do it and is it worth it, clash and combine?
Well, you don't just get a simple yes or no answer. Instead, this whole process leads to 4 very different outcomes. This little grid here lays it all out perfectly. Let's walk through it. Up in the top left, if you feel confident and you think the tool has high value, you get engaged adoption. You're all in, you're excited. Now, if you're confident but you just don't see the value, that's impassive acceptance. You'll use it if you have to, but your heart's not in it. Okay, bottom left. You see the value. You think it's great, but you have low confidence. That's discouraged hesitation. You want to use it, but you're afraid you can't. And finally, low confidence and low value, that's a recipe for aversive rejection. It's a hard pass. And this, right here, is the absolute key takeaway of the whole model. A teacher's response isn't just about their confidence, and it isn't just about how useful the tool is. It's about how those two things interact with each other. You've got to look at both sides of that coin if you really want to understand why a teacher makes the choice they do. Okay, so this is all really interesting, but what's the point? How do we actually use this? Well, this model gives us a fantastic roadmap for creating professional development that is way smarter, way more effective, and honestly, just more human. The kind that actually works. So here are some real practical things we can do. First, stop focusing only on skills. We have to make the case for the tools of value. Why should a teacher even care? Second, use those peer demonstrations. Watching a colleague succeed is pure gold for building both confidence and a sense of value. Third, give people a chance to just play. Low-stakes experimentation is how you build real confidence. Also, be honest about the downsides. Acknowledge the time commitment and the barriers. Pretending they don't exist just makes people trust you less. And maybe the biggest one of all, one size does not fit all. The way you support a teacher who's hesitating is totally different from how you'd approach someone who has flat out rejected the tool. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. Now that you have this framework, this idea of value versus efficacy, how might that change how you look at the next new tool that gets pushed your way? It's a really powerful lens, not just for schools trying to make changes, but for each of us in our own professional lives.